Michael Hart awoke on a gray morning in suburban Seattle, feeling uneasy. He was 42 and had spent the last 5 years working as a cybersecurity consultant, drawing on his experience as a former NSA analyst. His life had seemed orderly, a comfortable home in Bellevue, a stable career, and what he thought was a solid marriage to Rachel. Rachel Hart, a vivacious brunette in her early 30s, was the public relations director for a promising biomedical startup. They had been married for 8 years, and Michael had always trusted her implicitly. But in recent weeks, their marriage has been strained. He walked down to the kitchen and saw that Rachel was already dressed for work. She was standing at the counter, mechanically stirring her coffee in her favorite mug. Her face was tired, and there were shadows under her eyes. "Good morning," Michael said quietly, trying to meet her eyes. "Hello," she responded without turning around. "I'm leaving early today. I have a lot of meetings." Michael nodded and sat down at the table. He watched Rachel nervously check her smartphone next to her cup. They used to talk over breakfast, sharing their plans for the day. Now there was an awkward silence. "Negotiations with investors again?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Rachel took a sip of coffee and answered after a pause. "Yes, meetings with potential investors, and we still need to prepare a press release." She looked away, answering too quickly, and Michael felt a twinge of doubt. Something was wrong. Rachel had begun to work late, coming home late, citing a rush to launch a new biotech product. He respected her career ambitions, but his gut instinct told him it was more than just work. The previous evening, while looking at the family calendar on his laptop, Michael noticed that Rachel had a dinner planned for the following day with someone called JB. The initials meant nothing to him. He asked her what the meeting was about, and she responded evasively, "Oh, it's just a business dinner with one of our partners." Usually, she shared details, boasted about her work successes, mentioned names. Now only initials. JB. It might be a coincidence, but the name Senator Julian Barkley came up in conversations with Rachel recently. She said their startup was trying to drum up support from influential people to promote a new medical project, and Barkley was a key figure, a senator interested in biotech. But could she have dined with him in person? It seems uncommon for senators to meet with startup PR directors off the record. "Are you coming back late?" he asked casually, pretending to be carefully reading the news on his tablet. "Not before 10, I suppose," Rachel replied, and forced an apologetic smile. "Don't wait for me with dinner, okay?" "Of course," Michael said softly. "Have a nice day." She left quickly, kissing him on the cheek goodbye. The kiss was somehow formal and cold. The door slammed shut, and the silence of the kitchen was broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Michael put down his tablet and rubbed his face with his palms wearily. He tried to convince himself that everything was fine, that the stress of work was affecting her behavior. But his doubts grew stronger. Over the years of serving in the NSA, he had become accustomed to trusting the facts and his analytical instincts. And the facts were these. Rachel often withdrew into herself, put her phone face down, and even took it to the bathroom. Work trips became more frequent. And now the mysterious dinner with JB. For a few minutes, he simply sat there, replaying recent trivialities in his head. 6 months ago, on their wedding anniversary, she seemed happy and sincere. What has changed? Michael remembered how a month ago he had returned from a conference early and found her talking on the phone in a muffled voice. When he appeared, she had flinched and immediately cut off the call, saying, "I'll call you back later." At the time, he hadn't attached any importance to it, you never know, a confidential work conversation. But now such episodes have formed an alarming picture. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a typical Seattle rain was drizzling. There was something about the gray clouds and the wet street that resonated with his mood. A mixture of fear and determination was brewing in his soul. Fear because he could lose faith in the man he loved. Determination because the uncertainty was killing him, and he had to find out the truth. After all, trust is the foundation of marriage. If there is a problem illusion trust instead of real mutual understanding, is it possible to live in a lie any longer? Michael sighed heavily. He understood that there was a difficult path ahead. He had to find out what Rachel was hiding. That same day at work, Michael couldn't concentrate. His office was in downtown Seattle, where he consulted for various companies on information security. Usually, he could easily get lost in analyzing network traffic or checking systems for vulnerabilities. But today, numbers and codes were swimming before his eyes. A colleague on the project, Tom, noticed Michael's distraction and asked, "Are you okay, Mike? You don't seem yourself." Michael almost shared his pain, but held back. He was not used to talking about personal problems in a professional environment. "Yep, I just didn't get enough sleep." He waved it off. "Everything will be ready by morning, don't worry." He got home around 7 o'clock. The house was dark and quiet. Rachel hadn't returned from her meeting yet. Michael felt a sense of apprehension building inside him. To distract himself, he decided to check his email and do some work. The electric fireplace flickered in his home office, and family photos lined the bookshelf, including a picture of him and Rachel laughing against the backdrop of Lake Washington, happy and in love. Looking at his wife's smile in the photo, Michael chuckled painfully at how much had changed. The computer beeped with a new email. It turned out to be a newsletter. The name Senator Julian Barkley was in the title. He opened the email and found an article from a business publication. It said that Senator Barkley had proposed an initiative to expedite consideration of a bill to support biomedical startups, promising tax breaks for companies developing innovative medical technologies. The startup where Rachel worked was named among the potential beneficiaries. Interesting, Michael thought. Barkley really was involved in the field related to Rachel's work. Was it a coincidence that she often mentioned him? Or was there a connection between them that went beyond work? The news line swam before his eyes. Michael realized that he couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer. He closed his laptop. A plan formed in his head. He would try to find out more about Rachel's meetings. Perhaps he should start with careful information gathering, check her phone bills, her calendar, take a closer look at her behavior, and ask a colleague if anyone knows about her schedule. The main thing was not to make any sudden movements, not to accuse without evidence. If his suspicions were wrong, he risked undeservedly destroying trust. But if they were true? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up. Headlights illuminated the living room window. Rachel was back. Michael took a deep breath, trying to clear the gloom from his face. He needed to get a grip on himself. The door opened, and she walked in, shaking the raindrops off her coat. The same smile played on her lips, the same habitual smile that had become her usual mask in recent weeks. "Hi," Rachel said, taking off her shoes. "Sorry it's so late. Everything went well, but I'm exhausted." "Nothing," he answered calmly. "How are you? Are you going to have dinner? I'll warm something up for you." "No, thank you, I'm not hungry." She hung up her coat. Michael noticed a thin gold chain around her neck that he hadn't seen before. A gift from someone. He didn't ask, he just noted the new details. Rachel came up and hugged him, but quickly pulled away. She smelled of expensive perfume, unfamiliar and clearly masculine. Michael's heart skipped a beat. The scent was cologne, definitely not his. She noticed the shadow on his face and frowned slightly. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Yes," he lied. "I just waited a long time for you. I'm glad you're home." A few more awkward phrases, and now she has already gone to the bedroom, citing fatigue. Michael was left standing in the middle of the living room, clenching his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white. Now there were almost no doubts left. Someone else's perfume, lies about meetings, the senator, new jewelry. That night Michael couldn't sleep for a long time. He was lying on the couch. Rachel had locked herself in the bedroom, citing the need to sleep without her husband snoring. They had never shared a bed like that before. Her gaze fell on the dim, reflected light of the street lamps on the ceiling. The illusion of trust, these words were spinning in his head. Had his marriage really become a sham? If the terrible truth were revealed, was he ready to accept it? The next morning, Michael woke up with a heavy heart and a firm determination to find out the truth. Rachel was no longer home. She had left for work at dawn, leaving a short note on the table. "I'll be late, we have a board meeting." Previously, such notes seemed touching, but now this laconic phrase only increased suspicions. Michael poured himself a coffee and sat down at his laptop. If Rachel was hiding something, traces might remain in the digital space. First, he decided to check the phone bill. Since the family plan was in his name, he had access to call details. He logged into the mobile operator's website, logged in, and pulled up a list of Rachel's incoming and outgoing calls over the past months. Looking through the long list of numbers, he noticed one that was repeated especially often, almost daily, often late at night. The number was unfamiliar, not one of their circle of friends, not a work number for the office. The cell phone, registered in Washington, D.C., indicated the District of Columbia, the capital. His heart sank. Washington, D.C., where Senator Julian Barkley often spent time. J.B. Julian Barkley. Calls were made to and from this number. The calls sometimes lasted more than an hour. Michael took a deep breath and made a note. The number is suspicious. He decided not to say the senator's name out loud, even to himself, until he was 100% sure. But the evidence was starting to come together. Next, he checked their joint bank accounts. Luckily, they had a joint household account for their daily expenses, and Michael regularly reconciled their finances. He scanned the recent transactions. Most were routine, utility bills, grocery shopping. But 2 days ago, there had been a large cash withdrawal $500, something Rachel rarely did. And a week earlier, a late-night bill from an expensive restaurant in downtown Seattle for more than $300. The calendar listed that evening as dinner with partners. It was possible, of course, that it had been a formal dinner, paid for with their personal money, but the amount seemed high to Michael, for a business dinner where her company would usually foot the bill. So either it had been personal, or the company would reimburse her later, in which case, why withdraw cash? Looking further down the statement, he came across a hotel charge for the previous month in Washington, D.C. Rachel had flown to Olympia for a conference. The bill seemed ordinary, but Michael remembered her complaint. "The hotel was crappy, I could barely sleep." But the amount on the statement indicated a 5-star hotel. Had she lied to him about the class of hotel? Why would she lie about staying in a suite if the company was paying for the trip? Unless the company was paying, but someone else. Michael felt his palms grow sweaty. He closed his eyes, trying to maintain the cool rationality he had been trained to have in the service. The facts, just the facts. A number that kept coming back. Strange expenses, inconsistencies in stories. Fragments of conversations with Rachel involuntarily floated into my head. "Senator Barkley wants to see our project for himself," she said a couple of weeks ago. "I might go to Washington for a meeting." She later said the meeting was online, and there was no flight to Washington. But was that true? She had a trip to Olympia on her calendar, but was there a secret connection to Washington, D.C.? Michael opened the corporate website of the startup where his wife worked. A month-old press release about a grant, with Senator Julian Barkley listed as a backer, and a picture of Rachel smiling next to him. He frowned. It looked official, but he had a sneaking suspicion that something personal was hiding between the lines of that picture. To avoid jumping to conclusions, he decided to talk to someone from Rachel's circle. He had a contact, Melissa, Rachel's assistant in the PR department, with whom he had crossed paths a couple of times at corporate events. Perhaps Melissa knew something about her boss's schedule. Of course, he had to be careful not to arouse suspicion. Michael found Melissa's number on his phone and dialed it. The girl didn't answer right away, and office noises could be heard in the background. "Hi, Melissa, it's Michael, Rachel's husband. Sorry to bother you. How are you?" "Oh, hello, Michael." There was surprise in his voice. "I'm fine. Did something happen?" "No," he tried to speak as casually as possible. "Listen, I can't get through to Rachel this morning. I'm worried. Her phone only rings. She said that the board of directors. Do you know if she's in the office or out on the road?" Melissa answered a little hesitantly. "Today, she seems to have been out this morning. She was talking about some important meeting outside the office. I don't know the details exactly." "Got it. And she'll be in the office after lunch. Do you know? I need to discuss a family matter with her. After lunch, the assistant paused. She mentioned that she might stop by, but then she has meetings. In general, her schedule has been very tight for the last couple of weeks. We barely see each other. Okay, Michael managed. Okay, thanks, Melissa. I'll try calling later. He hung up and stared at the screen for a while. The assistant was holding something back. Perhaps Melissa herself had her own guesses, but she was loyal to her boss. However, she confirmed the key thing. Rachel had been virtually absent from her office for the past few weeks. The data collected was becoming enough to almost be sure. Rachel was having an affair, and very likely with Senator Barkley. But it was one thing to suspect, and quite another to have proof. Michael considered his next steps. Personal surveillance. He could try to follow her himself, but his work schedule didn't always allow for time off. Besides, if she was a U.S. senator, security around her might be on alert. If they noticed the surveillance, there would be trouble. Hiring a private investigator was legal and reasonable. In Washington state, private investigators have the right to conduct surveillance in public places. Take photos, but they are also not allowed to break the law, such as hacking phones or secretly recording conversations without consent. Michael knew the limits of what was permissible. Memories of strict NSA instructions and US laws were fresh. It was not possible to illegally tap your wife's phone or read her personal letters without permission. Such intrusion could be considered a crime. He recalled a high-profile news story. A husband in Michigan was convicted of secretly checking his wife's emails, suspecting she was cheating. Back then, they said that neither federal nor state law makes exceptions for spouses. Invading someone else's electronic life is punishable, even if you are married. Michael did not intend to become a criminal. On the other hand, he had every right to collect open data and evidence. Photos in public places, please. Save the correspondence if he finds access legally. For example, if she left the account open on her home computer, then this is not hacking, but an accidental find. But deliberately picking passwords is illegal. He decided to act cautiously and within the law. A plan began to emerge, to seek legal advice and, in parallel, collect as much evidence as possible using available methods. The question of a detective remained open. Perhaps a lawyer would advise whether it was worth hiring one or whether alternatives could be used. That same day, during his lunch break, Michael found a contact for a well-known Seattle divorce law firm. He dialed the number and arranged a consultation for the following evening. The secretary on the other end of the line sounded polite and confident, assuring him that attorney Kate Langton would see him at a convenient time after work. After hanging up, Michael felt a strange sense of relief. The process had begun. The decision to contact a lawyer meant that he was internally accepting the possibility of divorce. It hadn't been easy, but it would have been worse to remain ignorant or deceived. By the end of the day, he had collected printouts of suspicious calls and transactions, saved screenshots. In the evening, returning home, Michael walked through the empty rooms. Rachel was late again. Perhaps she was with someone whose name he had not yet pronounced. On a shelf in the office was the iPad they used to use together for household chores, shopping lists, and notes. Rachel had long since upgraded to a new one, and this one was gathering dust. Suddenly, a realization struck. What if her account was still connected there? Michael turned on the tablet with trembling hands, hoping the device hadn't been reset to factory settings. The familiar background and row of apps appeared on the screen. He opened the Messages app, and his heart began to beat faster. There were Rachel's old messages saved there, synced through her Apple ID. The message feed was filled with the names of her colleagues, friends. He scrolled down and came across the initials JB, that contact. Opening the thread, Michael felt a chill in his chest. Correspondence from the past months. Short messages, half hints. Let's meet at the usual place at 7. JB wrote, I can't wait to see you. Another message sent late at night. My heart sank. Next, a discussion of some conference in D.C. Gratitude for helping with funding. You're the best. This is clearly not the language of purely business relations. Michael quickly took screenshots of each key message, trying to remain calm. His hands were shaking slightly. There it was, direct evidence of the closeness between Rachel and someone named JB, who by all appearances was Senator Barkley. In one recent message, JB had written, "Ratch, it's going to work out. I convinced the committee to give your project a grant. You promised me something for it, remember?" Michael's eyes swam with letters. The implication left no room for good interpretation. This was treason coupled with a corrupt business deal. He turned off the iPad and sat down, his face in his hands. It seemed like all his emotions were mixed up. Rage, pain, disappointment, and at the same time, the strange calm of an intelligence officer who had obtained critical data. The fog of illusions was clearing, revealing the bitter truth. After a few minutes, Michael pulled himself together. Now was not the time to let his emotions get the better of him. He needed to act. The evidence needed to be kept somewhere safe. He copied the photos of the correspondence onto a flash drive he always carried on his keychain. The flash drive was password protected, a habit instilled by years of working with classified data. Late that night, Rachel returned to find Michael lying on the living room couch, pretending to be asleep. He heard her quietly moving toward the bedroom, trying not to make any noise. His wife, the person he loved and trusted, was now like a stranger with secrets. In the darkness, Michael opened his eyes. He knew that tomorrow would be the time for the next steps. He had proof. Meeting with a lawyer would put everything in its place. How to protect himself and, perhaps, bring this story to light. Because this was no longer about adultery, it was about influencing political decisions, a scandal that could not be hushed up. The following evening, Michael walked into a small conference room at a downtown law firm. He was met by Kate Langton, a small woman in her 50s with a confident posture and a keen eye. She motioned for him to sit at a round table and began the conversation in a soft, professional tone. "So, Michael, I've read your call. Tell me what brought you to me." Michael felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't easy to say out loud what was gnawing at him from the inside, but he forced himself to calmly and clearly state the essence. Suspicions of his wife's infidelity, the evidence he had gathered, call details, strange expenses, and finally messages on the tablet indicating her affair with Senator Julian Barkley and possible abuse of office. The lawyer listened very attentively, practically without interrupting, only occasionally asking clarifying questions. How long had he suspected? Were there any children together? There were none. Joint property? There was no marriage contract, and his. When Michael mentioned the correspondence, Kate raised an eyebrow. "You accessed her messages legally, right?" "Yes," he nodded. "It's an old tablet, it's ours. Rachel used it herself once and didn't log out. I didn't hack the password." "I see." Kate made a note in her notebook. "It's good that you understand the limits of what is permitted. In such situations, people sometimes make mistakes. They start hacking their spouse's email or installing wiretaps, and this is illegal. I would not like charges to be brought against you." Michael clasped his hands together, feeling both tension and relief. He was on the right track. Everything was going according to protocol. "Kate," he said quietly, "I think I've made up my mind about getting a divorce. What she did, it wasn't just cheating, it was an ethical failure. I can't forgive it. What should we do?" The lawyer thought for a second and turned over the pages of her notebook, where she had already sketched out a plan. "Let's start with the main thing. Washington is a state of no-fault divorce, meaning we don't have to prove the wife's guilt to get a divorce. It is enough to indicate that the marriage is broken and cannot be restored. The court will not consider the moral side of adultery when dividing property or assigning alimony. The law does not punish adultery in itself." Michael nodded. He knew that. "But," Kate continued, raising a finger, "evidence of infidelity may be indirectly useful. First, if your spouse has been spending family funds on outside relationships, paying for hotels, gifts, dinners, we can report wasted assets. In Washington, a court may take into account significant shared money spent on a lover when dividing property. This is not a guarantee, but an argument. You mentioned withdrawing $500 in cash and a restaurant bill of $300. This could well be used as an example. Michael remembered the transactions and nodded. He was not so much seeking to punish with the ruble as he was wishing to protect himself. Secondly, the lawyer continued, perhaps you will want to hold these people accountable. But here we need to separate the personal and the legal. Your divorce is a separate process, and as for the senator and corruption, this goes beyond the divorce process. If there is a violation of the law, either law enforcement agencies or the media can deal with it if you decide to make it public. However, I advise you to first protect yourself in the family plan, formalize the divorce and finances, and only then think about a public scandal. Although I understand your indignation, you need to be cool. She looked at Michael, as if trying to gauge his reaction. He was silent, digesting. Kate continued. Now about the procedure. When you are ready, we file a petition for divorce in the Superior Court of the county in our case. It is the county court. Since you live in King County, when you file the petition, a temporary court order is automatically issued immediately, prohibiting both spouses from alienating property. Spending large sums of money without mutual consent is a standard measure to ensure that no one has time to hide assets. That's good, Michael said quietly. I'm worried about our house and the bills. Yes, let's discuss the property in more detail now. Kate turned the page. Did you buy the house together? Yes, we bought it together after the wedding, he confirmed. So, the house is the joint property of the spouses. It will be divided. Do you want to keep the house? Will you be able to buy out your wife's share? Or would you prefer to sell it and divide the money? Michael thought about it. The house was dear to him, but living there after all this might be unbearable. I think I'd prefer to sell it. Memories. He smiled wryly. I understand. Next, bills. Banking, investments. There are joint savings, an account. We've saved up about, he named the amount. And everyone has their own retirement savings, 401k. The pension money accumulated during the marriage is also usually divided, Kate explained. But you can agree on compensation. Also, does your wife have shares or options in her startup? Yes, she was given stock options in the company, Michael recalled. But the company is private, it's hard to value. We will request information. In a divorce, even potential value is taken into account, although it is complicated. If, say, she benefits from the sale of the company in the future, part of it may be due to you, since the options were earned during the marriage. Michael nodded. He hadn't thought about it. The lawyer continued asking questions, building up a financial picture. Then she returned to the trial itself. After the petition is filed, it must be officially handed to your wife via a courier, sheriff, or private processor. How do you think she will react? Will there be a scandal? Michael pictured Rachel's face as she received the papers, and for a moment he felt uneasy. But it couldn't get any worse. I think it's a blow for her, but I'll try to do everything correctly. Perhaps it would be better for me not to hand it to her personally, but officially. I agree. To avoid escalation, it would be better to use a professional courier to deliver the package. That's what we'll do. Kate made some more notes and looked up at Michael. You mentioned that you already have serious evidence correspondence, financial documents. It's very good that you collected them in advance. I would recommend that you continue to save any related materials but not cross the line. For example, if you manage to obtain evidence of expenses, hotel bills, airline tickets by legal means, collect them. We can send requests for disclosure of information as part of the divorce proceedings, if necessary. Got it. One more question. Michael hesitated. She doesn't know that I found out all this. Should I talk to her before the submission, or is it better to keep it a secret? Kate narrowed her eyes. It depends on your strategy. Sometimes a frank conversation can lead to a confession and a more peaceful settlement. But given that a senator is involved and potential criminal activity is taking place, she may try to cover her tracks or warn him. I think it's best to keep quiet until the documents are filed. In the days leading up to the filing, I advise you to take care of your personal security and finances. Change the passwords to your personal accounts if you have separate ones. You've already ordered a call detailing good. Perhaps temporarily transfer some of the money to your own separate account so that she doesn't suddenly spend it, but be careful not to violate anything. Keep in mind that once she receives the subpoena, she can't make any major transfers of funds without the court's permission. She smiled a little warmly, seeing how tensely Michael was gripping the armrest of his chair. I know this is all hard, but you are doing the right thing by coming. My job is to protect your rights and assets, and to make sure that the divorce goes according to the law and as smoothly as possible for you. Thank you, Michael replied hoarsely. He truly felt grateful. Finally, there was a professional willing to take on some of this burden. The last point, alimony. Are your incomes comparable to your wife's? Michael figured, as a consultant, he earned well, sometimes more than her, but in recent years her income had also increased. About the same level, he said. Maybe I'm a little bigger. In Washington, it is the financial situation that determines alimony, not the behavior. Even if she cheated, it does not deprive her of the right to ask for maintenance if she needed it. But if you are similar in income and she is able to work, the chances of payments are small. Another thing is if her career collapses due to a scandal and she loses her job, then theoretically she can ask for temporary support. However, we can argue that the loss of her job was her fault. This is not a legally prescribed factor, but we can try to appeal to the judge's fairness. Michael smiled sadly. The irony was that after doing something bad, Rachel could also demand money. We'll see how it goes, he snapped. The meeting came to an end. Kate summed it up. Tomorrow she would prepare a petition. Then, in a couple of days, it would be filed with the court and the service would be arranged. After that, the countdown of the 90 days of mandatory pause before the divorce would begin. This is the state law. They won't divorce you quickly. At this time, you can try to settle everything amicably or prepare for the process. Shaking his lawyer's hand goodbye, Michael felt more confident. He had a plan for his legal defense and a professional standing by his side. There were hard steps ahead, but at least they were clear. As he walked out of the office into the cool evening air, he looked out at the city lights. Kate's words echoed in his head. Protect yourself first, then go public. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. The number of an old friend, a journalist with whom he had once worked on data leaks, was still in his mind. Michael wondered, should he make the call now, or wait until the paperwork is filed? He put the phone back. No, a little later. First, let's complete the divorce step. And then the truth must come out. He'll give them a few days' head start, no more. 3 days after the lawyer's consultation, events began to unfold with alarming speed. A petition for divorce was filed in the county court, and on Friday morning a professional courier delivered the papers to Rachel. Michael deliberately chose a time when his wife was not at home. The courier was supposed to find her in the office, and so it was. At noon, Michael's phone vibrated. His wife's name appeared on the screen. He braced himself, trying to keep his composure. What does this mean? Rachel almost screamed into the phone from the very first word. You filed for divorce? Is this some kind of mistake? Her voice was a mixture of rage and panic. Michael answered quietly. No mistake, I filed. There was silence on the other end for a couple of seconds, then a muffled voice was heard. Why? Where? Rachel took a breath, trying to pull herself together. Michael, let's talk. We can't do this just like that, out of the blue, through couriers. Let's talk, he agreed, feeling a tremor in his voice that he tried to suppress. At home in the evening, she hesitated a little. Okay? Her voice sounded either confused or doomed. I'll be there at 6. The rest of the day dragged on painfully slowly for Michael. He let himself leave work early, citing family circumstances. A colleague patted him on the shoulder in understanding apparently. The expression on Michael's face was eloquent. He showed up at home around 5 in order to have time to mentally prepare for the conversation. He settled down in the living room, clearing the table of all unnecessary items. The only thing missing to make the moment important was a glass of whiskey, but he didn't want to drink, he needed a sober head. At exactly 6 o'clock, the front door slammed. Rachel walked in quickly. as if she was afraid to change her mind, and stopped in front of her husband. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were filled with worry, anger, and an attempt to maintain dignity. In her hands, she held an envelope with court papers. "Explain yourself," she demanded from the doorway, clutching the envelope. "What a farce, Michael. Do you want to ruin our marriage like this, suddenly?" He motioned for her to sit down, but she remained standing. Then Michael stood up too. "Nothing sudden, Rachel. This decision has been brewing for me for a long time." He looked her straight in the eye. "I know about you and Barkley." The wife's face twitched, but she quickly feigned incomprehension. "What? What does Senator Barkley have to do with this? Are you jealous of me for him?" "Enough," Michael raised his voice, surprising himself with his own firmness. "I saw everything. The correspondence, the calls. You cheated on me with him." Rachel paled, her attempt at innocent eyes failing. Her hand with the envelope dropped to her side. "Eavesdropping on my conversations. Breaking into the phone?" she hissed. "No. You left the traces yourself." He nodded at the cabinet where the ill-fated tablet lay. "Forgot to log out of the old iPad." A few seconds later, understanding was reflected on her face. Rachel closed her eyes and exhaled as if she had been hit. When she opened them, her gaze was hard. "And what did you see?" she asked coldly. "Enough," Michael replied. "Your meetings, the hints in the messages, and more. You engaged in a scam, trading your principles for the senator's support, using your job to advance his interests or vice versa his influence for your company. What do you call it? Corruption, collusion." Rachel flushed. "Don't you dare blame me. You don't understand anything." She took a step forward. "Yes, Julian and I had a relationship, but you don't have to lecture me. You were absorbed in your work for months. I felt lonely. It just happened." Michael smiled bitterly. "Happened? You've been leading me on for months. Okay, cheating, we're both adults. His love for me is over, and with him it's passion. Anything can happen. But what you did at work, you broke the law, Rachel." "No," she snapped. "I didn't break anything. Everything that happened was between consenting adults, as they say. My personal life is none of the company's business. And with the project, the senator really believes in our technology. He helped out of the kindness of his heart." "Out of kindness, huh?" Michael shook his head. "He wrote to you directly that you allocated a grant and that you promised something in return. Do you want me to quote?" Rachel's cheeks flushed again, this time from shame or anger. "You took pictures of the correspondence. How low have you fallen?" she hissed. "Low?" Michael raised his voice. "I have fallen low? And you, Rachel? You slept with an official to advance a project. Isn't that low? Don't you dare judge me," she screamed, her eyes shining. "You never understood the pressure I work under. These investors, the media. I needed an ally, a patron. Yes, I got close to Barkley. He's charismatic, strong. I lost my head. But it's not as cynical as you think. Cynical or not, it doesn't matter anymore," Michael said wearily. "The fact is, our marriage is broken. I can't live with someone who lied to me." Rachel sank down on the edge of the couch, covering her face with her hand. For a few moments, she simply breathed, trying to control her emotions. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking. "So what now? You decided to destroy both me and Julian. That's why you filed for divorce?" "I filed for divorce because I see no other way out," he said firmly. "As for the two of you, you have destroyed yourselves with your actions." She looked at him from under her brows. "You don't understand what you're getting yourself into. This is politics, Michael. If you air your trash in public, there will be a scandal. You'll suffer too. Your name will appear in the press as a source. It will hurt your reputation too." There was a note of confidence in her voice, even a threat. "And Julian, he's very well connected. He won't tolerate public humiliation. He'll find a way to—" "What?" he interrupted. "Scare? Remove? Do you hear yourself, Rachel? What have you come to?" She turned away, clasping her fingers. Michael picked up a prepared sheet of paper from the table, a copy of their recent bank statement, with the disputed transactions highlighted in marker. See this? He handed her the sheet. $500 cash 10 days ago, $320 at La Belle restaurant 2 weeks ago. You spent our shared funds on your secret meetings. Rachel glanced at it and dropped the paper. You're pathetic if you count pennies, she said angrily. Have you decided to present me with a bill? Well, I also paid a lot for you while you were out of work. Do you want me to remember that too? It was as if an electric shock had struck him. He remembered that period. After leaving the NSA, he had spent several months searching for himself, and she really did earn more then. Don't get off topic, Michael said, gritting his teeth. This isn't about money, it's about trust. But since we're already, keep in mind that my lawyer will demand compensation for your side expenses when dividing the property. Your lawyer. She chuckled through the tears that glistened in the corners of her eyes. You thought it all through then, decided to stab me in the back without even trying to talk. Try to talk, he echoed. Couldn't you have talked to him before sleeping with him? Rachel closed her eyes, 2 tears rolling down her cheeks. They were both silent for a while. Only the ticking of the clock broke the silence. Finally, she stood up, straightened up, and spoke more calmly, abruptly. Okay, if you decide to get a divorce, you will get a divorce. I will hire a good lawyer. And you know, Michael. She looked at him with unexpected bitterness. Despite everything, I am sorry that everything is like this. I am guilty before you. Forgive me, if you can. These words, spoken sincerely or feigned, Michael could no longer tell took him by surprise. Something fluttered in his chest. He turned away. It's too late to apologize, Rachel. The wife nodded slightly and wiped the corners of her eyes. I'll stay in the city for now, in a friend's apartment, she said quietly. I don't think we should share a roof. I agree, he replied. I'll pick up my things tomorrow, she said evenly, as if the business meeting had come to an end. And I ask you, Michael, for the sake of everything we had, don't get involved in this political dirt. Let's get a quiet divorce and go our separate ways. Don't ruin other people's careers. It's not good for anyone. Michael was silent. He noted to himself that she had not said, don't ruin my career, but had covered herself with the phrase strangers. Behind this, concern for Barkley was clearly visible. Once again, he was convinced she was no longer on his side. Rachel, without waiting for an answer, turned and walked quickly towards the exit. The door closed. Michael stood in the middle of the living room, feeling empty. The house instantly became strange and silent. He sank into a chair, ran his hands over his face. It was hard to believe that this dramatic scene was part of his life. But amidst the pain and anger, there was a glimmer of relief. The secret was out in the open, and the only way forward was forward. Rachel would leave, and they would begin a new stage negotiations through lawyers, division of property. And yes, he had already firmly decided exposure. Despite her pleas and threats, he was not going to cover up the senator's sins. Michael barely slept that night. He wandered around the empty house, collecting picture frames with happy memories in a box to hide from sight. Every room was a reminder of a past that had now collapsed. But there was nothing to regret. He had done what he had to. Closer to the morning, tired, he dozed off for a couple of hours. Waking up at dawn, the first thing he did was pick up the phone. It was time to do what had been brewing for a long time, contact the journalist. Early Saturday morning, Michael went to meet the man he was going to tell his story to. His name was Eric White, a seasoned investigative reporter for a major Seattle newspaper. Michael had crossed paths with him indirectly. A few years earlier, Eric had written an article about cybersecurity and had gotten Michael's commentary through mutual friends. They weren't close friends, but they kept in touch. Now Michael remembered him as a man of principle and meticulousness. They met on neutral territory in a small cafe on the outskirts of Bellevue, where it was quiet and uncrowded in the morning. Michael chose a table in the corner from where he could see the entrance. Was he worried about being followed? A little. After all, this was a high-ranking senator. But he decided that caution was enough. He had not announced his plan publicly, and an incognito meeting in a cafe was quite safe. Eric appeared almost unnoticed. A tall, thin man in his 40s, with a laptop under his arm and a wary look. They shook hands and exchanged brief greetings. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Michael said quietly as the waitress walked away after taking the order. "Your call intrigued me," Eric replied, also lowering his voice. "You said it was about Senator Barkley and some startup." "And it concerns me personally," Michael nodded. "I must immediately make a reservation. I am a source, an interested party. It is my wife, or rather, almost ex-wife," he smiled bitterly, "who is involved in this story. But everything I will tell is true, and I have evidence." The journalist looked at him attentively, without taking notes. Apparently, he wanted to hear the whole thing first. Michael started from the beginning, about how he suspected Rachel, how he learned about the affair with the senator. Then he got to the point, the correspondence, where a deal is actually visible. The senators help in exchange for an intimate relationship. He gave Eric a flash drive, which contained screenshots of messages, photos, and account statements. Eric inserted the flash drive into his laptop and began to look through the files, occasionally raising his eyebrows. Michael sat next to him, commenting. "Here you can see the initials JB are Julian Barclay. I have his phone numbers from open sources. They match what is written. And this is a message from him. Convince the committee to allocate a grant to your project. You promised me something for this, remember." The journalist nodded as he read. "Pretty straightforward," he muttered. "That's good, from an evidential point of view." He scrolled further. "Here she writes," Michael continued, "Julian, I've translated the data from our trial for you to use in your speech." That is, she was sharing some inside information from the company, apparently for his speeches or arguments. Eric noted. It could be a violation of corporate confidentiality. But the main thing is that if the senator received something valuable from her for his support, it smacks of corruption. The law prohibits members of Congress from using their official position for personal gain, either money or services. Of course, a relationship by mutual consent does not fall directly under the category of a bribe, but if there was sexual relations in exchange for political patronage, a scandal is guaranteed. The Senate's ethical standards have definitely been violated. Exactly, Michael tapped his finger on the table. In addition, there is a financial aspect. She could give him advice from the closed kitchen of the company, for example, about prospects, and he could invest in these companies. According to the Stock Act of 2012, congressmen are prohibited from using non-public information to enrich themselves if it can be proven that he received insider information. That would be a criminal offense. Eric gave him a quick, interested glance. Serious statements. We'll need solid evidence. For now, we have personal correspondence and hints. Although, honestly, from a political point of view, this would be enough to shake Barkley's career. He's running for re-election next year, as far as I remember. "Yes, I thought I was going to run again," Michael confirmed. The journalist bit his lip, thinking about what he had heard. Then he asked, "Your wife is a PR director, right? So she probably has access to boards of directors, planning meetings. Maybe there are witnesses that she lobbied for the interests of the senator within the company, or, say, was the initiator to attract him. I don't know yet," Michael admitted. "I don't have any contacts inside the company, except maybe her assistant, but I doubt she knows much." "We'll try to find out for ourselves," assured Eric. "I have a colleague in the editorial office who deals with the topic of biotech. We'll try to find out through our channels whether anyone has noticed anything strange. We'll also check what grants or preferences this startup received. You said a press release about some grant." "Yes." Michael pulled out a copy of the press release, printed out in advance, and handed it to Eric. "Here it is. A grant from the Federal Innovation Fund, quite a large one, announced a month ago. Barkley was among those who publicly supported the program." Eric quickly scanned the text. "I see. We can request documents on this grant, find out if there was any patronage there." He leaned back in his chair. "The story is certainly loud. Senator, sex, Privileges, the media loves that. But I want to warn you, our editorial board will not go to print until we double-check everything. We do not want to get hit with a libel lawsuit. Barkley will not remain silent, he will fight back. We need to prove beyond doubt that he abused his power. Adultery is simply a personal matter, even though it is a scandal. But we will dig deeper. I understand, Michael nodded. I'm ready to cooperate. I'll give you any information I have. Eric took a sip of his cooling coffee and looked at him carefully. You realize that if this comes out, your wife, sorry, X, will suffer greatly. She could be charged as a participant. She will definitely lose her job. Michael clenched his fists under the table. The pain was still alive in him, but he said firmly, she made her choice. I warned her yesterday that I had no intention of hiding all this. By the way, she begged me not to ruin careers, mainly his, so, apparently, she was already prepared to sacrifice hers for his. The journalist frowned slightly. Do you think she will cover for the senator? It looks like it, Michael sighed. She asked me to stay out of the mud, even though it's her own fault. We're both at fault. Eric closed the laptop and put it away, carefully placing the flash drive in his jacket pocket. Well, Michael, our next steps will be as follows. I will begin my investigation. I will check phones, sources, and perhaps involve another journalist. We will probably have to get comments. At some point, we will ask Senator Barkley himself and the company's management for a comment. We usually do this just before publication, when the material is 90% ready, to get their reaction. You must understand, as soon as we ask them, they will immediately understand which way the wind is blowing. The senator will probably guess that it could not have been done without you. Michael nodded. He had already thought about this risk. I'd prefer to remain anonymous, he said. Although Rachel will probably understand right away, I don't want to go public officially. Of course, according to the rules, we can cite a source close to the company or something like that. Or not mention the source at all, but present it as our own investigation. Eric grinned. But for the editorial lawyer, we will need to explain where the data comes from. I think there will be no problems. The correspondence speaks for itself. If anything, you can give a written statement or affidavit, but that's a last resort. Fine. They discussed a few more details. Michael gave the journalist phone numbers associated with Barkley, contacts of some mutual acquaintances who could confirm secret meetings. He recalled that a neighbor in the house once saw Rachel getting into someone else's car at night. He gave the journalist the neighbor's last name. We might ask you to confirm the facts in the event of an official investigation, Eric added as he parted. For example, if it gets to the Senate Ethics Committee, or say the FBI gets interested, would you be willing to testify? Michael thought about it. Getting involved fully in an outside investigation would mean possibly having to testify under oath and going through publicity. If I have to, then yes, he answered slowly. Even though it's hard, I don't want to back down. Eric extended his hand. Okay, let's exchange contacts again. I'll keep you updated. But for now, try not to tell anyone about our meeting. And in general, take care of yourself. I don't think Barkley is capable of any stupidity, but when people are cornered, they are unpredictable. Michael shook his hand. Got it. And you be careful so that no one gets wind of it ahead of time. They parted, agreeing to stay in touch. Michael felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. The step he had been afraid of had been taken. The machine of public exposure had been launched. Eric would take charge, and Michael had faith that he would see it through to the end. As he left the cafe, he looked up at the overcast sky. A light, autumnal rain had begun to fall. The story was probably only a few days or weeks away from publication. Michael knew that another storm was coming, much stronger than this rain. But now the lie would have no defense. The illusion of trust in which he had lived was finally shattered, and the truth would sound like thunder. Several tense days passed in anticipation. Michael tried to occupy himself with work and routine matters, but every ringing notification on his phone made him jump. His lawyer, Kate, reported that Rachel's lawyer had contacted her and informed her of his intention to settle the matter peacefully. Translated from legalese, this meant that Rachel did not want a protracted war and, it seemed, was ready to negotiate. Michael only chuckled when Kate said, "They asked that the reasons for the divorce not be disclosed publicly." Apparently, Rachel was already worried about her reputation. On Wednesday evening, exactly a week after the meeting with the journalist, Eric White called himself. "Michael, hi. Get ready, things are about to get going," he said cheerfully. "We're almost done with the material. We're planning to release the article online tomorrow and in print the day after." Michael's heart began to pound. He remained silent, letting Eric continue. "This afternoon, we asked Senator Barkley for a comment," the journalist reported. "Both his press service and we called him personally. At first he stalled, and a couple of hours ago his office sent an official response that, I quote, Senator Barkley categorically denies insinuations of inappropriate relationships or inappropriate behavior. Any accusations of abuse of office are false." End of quote. As expected, Michael exhaled. "And Rachel?" "We've also sent a request to the startup company," Eric said. "They've only responded so far that they're not aware of any wrongdoing by their employees and that they maintain high ethical standards." Rachel herself could not be reached for comment. Her office said she was taking a leave of absence. "Vacation," Michael repeated. "So, events are developing. Perhaps the company has already suspected something or Rachel has warned the management." "Look," Eric's voice became more serious after our inquiry. "I'm sure that Barkley already understood where this is coming from. And your wife, of course, knows. Be on your guard." "Got it. I'm waiting for the article. I'll let you know tomorrow morning when we publish it," the journalist assured. "Hang in there." Michael had barely finished the call when the phone rang again, an unfamiliar number with a Washington, D.C. area code. His heart sank. He guessed who it was, and he was right. "Hello," Michael said tensely. "Michael Hart," came a low, slightly hoarse voice that sounded like it was used to giving orders. "Yes, I'm in touch." He felt his jaw clench. "This is Senator Julian Barkley." The other man's voice was cold. "I suppose you can guess why I'm calling you." Michael closed his eyes for a second, trying to maintain his composure. "I can guess." There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Then Barkley spoke with feigned calm. "Look, we're both adults. I understand the situation is unpleasant. Between me and your wife. Feelings have developed. It's a personal matter. I'm sorry if I hurt you as a husband. But dragging the press into this is the worst decision for everyone." Michael didn't answer right away, and the senator continued, slightly raising the level of persuasion. "Think about it, Mr. Hart. If this story gets out, there will be consequences. For Rachel, they will be catastrophic. Her career is ruined. Her reputation is in tatters. She could be fired. She might never find a job in a decent company again. You don't want to ruin the life of a woman you once loved, do you?" Michael felt his indignation flare at this manipulative speech. "You are right, Senator," he finally said. "We are both adults, and the responsibility for these consequences lies with those who committed the acts and not with the one who speaks the truth." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Barkley spoke again, his voice was icy. "You seem determined to defame me. But be warned, making unfounded accusations against a public figure is a very risky undertaking. I may file a defamation suit. You yourself may be prosecuted for conspiracy. None of the accusations are unfounded," Michael snapped. "I have evidence, and I gave it to the journalists." "You are a pathetic blackmailer," the senator suddenly spat out, becoming rude. "Have you decided to take revenge on your wife and me in this way? What do you want, money? Influence?" Michael even grinned in surprise. "A blackmailer? I don't need money or influential friends. I want only one thing: justice. For those who abuse people's trust to be held accountable." "What do you understand?" Barkley hissed, losing his composure. "I've done more for this country than you with your pathetic office intrigues. Are you going to ruin the work of an important project for the sake of your wounded pride?" "It's not for you to talk about morality, Senator," Michael answered firmly. If a project is really important, it should be promoted honestly and not through the bed of a PR director. There was a heavy breathing in response. Barkley was obviously seething with anger, but trying to pull himself together. "This is your last chance, Hart," he finally said, his voice menacingly low. "Retract everything. Contact this paper and refute it. You'll be sorry." "Is that a threat?" Michael asked calmly, though his heart was pounding. "A warning," the senator muttered. "I have friends in both legal circles and in the security forces. Believe me, if you dig into your biography, you can find skeletons in anyone's closet." Michael suddenly felt a strange calm. Fear retreated, giving way to confidence in his own rightness. "I have nothing to hide," he said, "and I am not afraid of your friends. Do what you think is right, Mr. Barclay, as I do." "That's a pity," the senator responded coldly. "You chose the war yourself." There was a sharp, all-clear signal Barkley had passed out. Michael lowered the phone and wiped his damp palm on his jeans. His heart was pounding, but not from fear, more from adrenaline. He immediately wrote down a summary of the conversation in a notebook while his memory was fresh. It is useful to record such things. Who knows, maybe they will come in handy as evidence of an attempt at pressure. Sitting down on the sofa, he allowed himself a minute to come to his senses. Well, now he was sure. Barkley was scared and furious, and even if he threatened, it was too late to retreat. Later that evening, Kate called. Surprisingly, she was already aware of the impending scandal. Apparently, rumors had spread around town. "Michael, I heard some interesting news," she said dryly. "Is it true that you gave information to the journalists about Barkley?" "Yes, he didn't hide it. Sorry I didn't warn you." The lawyer sighed. "I understand your motives, but be warned. The divorce may become more complicated now. If this story takes off, Rachel and her lawyer may take a more aggressive stance due to bitterness, to the point that your property division will become a battlefield." "I'm ready," Michael answered firmly. "I couldn't do otherwise, Kate." "Okay, then here's some advice. Don't officially comment to the press on the divorce or personal details. Let all the attention be on their corruption scandal, and we'll do ours, divide the property according to the law without emotion." "Understood." After finishing the conversation, Michael felt grateful to his lawyer. She did not dissuade him, did not reproach him. She only warned him about possible tactical complications. The night before the article was published, I was sleepless. Michael was browsing the news on the internet, but there was nothing yet. The editors were keeping the material secret until the last minute. He wondered, what if something goes wrong? For example, Barkley uses his influence to put pressure on the newspaper publishers. In the US, the press is free, but politicians sometimes find leverage through media owners, advertisers. However, knowing Eric, Michael believed that he would not give up his position without a fight. He dozed off towards morning, and when he woke up, he immediately reached for his phone. And for good reason. A message came from Eric White. Just one word: "Let's go." Michael jumped up, opened his browser, and typed in the newspaper's website with trembling fingers. On the front page, in large print, was the headline: "Senator Barkley involved in sex scandal with biotech employee, possible conflict of interest." He closed his eyes for a second, feeling a storm of emotions wash over him. Then he began to read, immersing himself in the text that would change the lives of several people forever. The news spread like wildfire. Before noon, the story about Senator Barkley and his secret affair with a biomedical firm employee was broadcast on all major TV channels. Internet portals vied with each other to reprint details from the original article. It stated, citing anonymous sources and provided materials, that Senator Julian Barkley had been in an intimate relationship with a startup's PR director for months. That's what they called Rachel's company, while also giving the company political support. It included excerpts from messages that weren't overtly obscene, but were enough to understand the nature of the relationship, mentioned a grant the senator was lobbying for, and raised questions about possible conflicts of interest and ethical violations. The article didn't reveal any names in the correspondence, not Rachel's name, nor any direct quotes from her, but to industry circles, it was clear. Michael watched the events unfold with a sense of unreality. His phone was literally red hot. Acquaintances, friends, colleagues were calling, some with sympathy, some out of curiosity. He briefly confirmed to a close friend, "Yes, it was about Rachel. Yes, it was all true, but I didn't want to discuss the details." Most simply expressed support. One of his colleagues, Tom, carefully asked if Michael needed a day off or help, to which he replied that he could handle it. Meanwhile, officials vied with each other to make statements. The leader of the Senate faction announced that they were familiarized with the publication and are reviewing the situation. When asked by journalists whether the Senate Ethics Committee would launch an investigation, they did not give a direct answer, but as political analysts noted, such scandals are usually not hushed up. Social media users demanded that Barkley step down pending the investigation. Opposition politicians seized the opportunity. A couple of congressmen have already tweeted about unacceptable behavior and called for transparency. Medinovate issued a press release in the afternoon. Michael read it with interest. The board of directors has initiated an internal investigation into the facts reported in the media. The employee featured in the publications has been suspended pending an investigation. The company adheres to the highest standards. And so on. Rachel's name was not mentioned again, but everyone guessed. Suspended, which means, in essence, a step towards dismissal. This did not come as a surprise to Michael, but bitterness stirred inside. So many years of work, and just like that, in an instant, crossed out. However, he pushed these emotions away. She herself had destroyed her career. Rachel herself did not make any public appearances. However, later that evening, Michael received a message from her. It was short, "I hate you." He stared at those two words on the screen for a long time. No apology, no justification, just concentrated anger. He didn't answer. And what could he say? Deep down, he almost felt sorry for her on a human level, regardless of the insults. But that pity was drowned in the memory of the lies and the choices she had made. As the night approached, surreal moments began for Michael. A local TV channel car pulled up at the gate of his house, a journalist and a cameraman. Apparently, they had found out the address of that very employee and were hoping to get some footage or comments. Hearing a female voice on the intercom, "We're from Channel 5, we'd like to talk." Michael felt himself panicking. The last thing he needed was for his face to appear on TV. He briefly refused, citing a desire to maintain privacy, and turned off the intercom. Fortunately, they didn't insist perhaps, according to the law, they couldn't invade private territory. That evening, the news showed footage of Senator Barkley, besieged by reporters in the hallways of the Capitol, silently walking to the elevator under a hail of questions. "Is it true that you had an affair with a startup employee? Did you use your influence to their advantage? Have you been called before the ethics committee yet?" Barkley said nothing, staring straight ahead, and only repeated through a press secretary that all the allegations are false. He looked gloomy and tired. At one point, Michael found himself almost feeling sorry for the senator. He looked defeated, as if he had aged 10 years in a matter of hours. But then he remembered his conversation with him on the phone, the threats, the arrogance, and the pity evaporated. Everyone is responsible for their own actions. Late in the evening, Eric White called him. The journalist was on adrenaline. "Well, did you see the fireworks?" he said instead of greeting. "Our site is down from traffic. The editorial office's phone is ringing off the hook." "I saw it," Michael answered wearily. "I think it's reality now." "Yes, thank you, my friend," Eric suddenly added seriously. "Without your materials, we would not have dug up half of it. You, of course, will remain anonymous, but keep in mind, some of our fellow journalists already guess where the wind is coming from. It coincided too much with your divorce, which was suddenly filed. The city is not that big." "I understand," Michael sighed. "I didn't expect to remain incognito forever." "If anything happens, you may be called to give official testimony," Eric warned. "For example, if the case goes further to the prosecutor's office or a hearing." "I'm ready," he confirmed. I won't walk around with a screaming bag. Eric laughed at the strange turn of phrase. Listen, we'll stay in touch. And also be careful, really. Such people can get mad unpredictably. Yeah, was all Michael said. He hung up the phone, feeling empty. The day's events had overwhelmed him, but he had been more of an observer than a participant. He had played his main role behind the scenes, and now the curtain had risen and the drama was going on without him. Dogs barked outside, lights flashed, either the police were driving by or journalists were still cruising the area. Michael closed the curtains. He wondered where Rachel was now. Surely with a lawyer, maybe with someone close to her, if she had any friends left. Or alone, in despair. He didn't want to savor her suffering, but sympathy was also forbidden. The wound in his own soul was too fresh. Before going to bed, he received another message from an unfamiliar number. You are a hero. Thank you for revealing the truth. There was no signature. Perhaps it was written by one of the company's employees or simply a concerned reader. Michael did not respond, but his soul warmed. His actions were noticed by those for whom he was trying, ordinary people who wanted to see honesty from those in power. That night, for the first time in a long time, he slept soundly. The noise around him continued, but inside he felt a quiet relief. The truth had come out, and ahead, despite the chaos, there was hope for a new beginning, this time without illusions. Michael Hart woke up in his new apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. It was early morning. Gray light filtered through the blinds, and rain could be heard outside. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, until his alarm went off at 6:30. Michael stretched, turned off the alarm, and sat up, rubbing his face. The last few weeks had been hard, but he was trying to move on. The Senator Julian Barkley scandal was still abuzz in the news. A story published in a local newspaper and then picked up by national media had caused a firestorm. The Senate Ethics Committee had launched an investigation, and Infidelity, where Rachel worked, was under pressure. Michael tried to avoid the news, but it reached him through colleagues and the occasional headline. He knew that Rachel had left Seattle, presumably for Portland, to be with a friend while her lawyers worked out her divorce. Michael hadn't spoken to her since the day she moved her things out of their Bellevue home. The divorce was finalized quickly. Thanks to attorney Kate Langton and Washington State's no-fault laws, it took only a couple of months. Rachel didn't argue about the division of property. Her career at Infidelity was in tatters, and she seemed eager to close the chapter. They split their savings down the middle, about $120,000 each. Michael kept his retirement account, which he'd accumulated over his years at the NSA and in consulting. The Bellevue house sold for $1.2 million, and after the mortgage was paid off, Michael got his share, about $400,000. He used the money to buy a condo in Capitol Hill for $350,000, a small two-bedroom with a view of the city. He put the rest in a savings account. The new apartment was cozy but empty. The furniture was minimalist, mostly from IKEA, a sofa, a coffee table, a bed, and a desk in the corner. Michael didn't buy anything extra, deciding that he would furnish the place over time. For now, the bare necessities were enough. He put up a couple of shelves for books and a laptop, but the walls were bare, no photos, no paintings. He put the old photos of Rachel in a box and hid them in the closet. Michael stood up, made a pot of coffee, and turned on the TV in the background, tuning it to the morning news. The weather report was replaced by the headline, Senator Barkley to resign as chair of Science and Technology Committee. Michael shook his head and switched to a podcast about cybersecurity. He didn't want to get into that story again. Barkley had said he was leaving to focus on his family, but Michael knew the truth. The senator was trying to save face in the face of the inevitable investigation. He finished his coffee, packed his backpack, and headed to the office. Michael worked at a cybersecurity consulting firm in downtown Seattle, a 10-minute walk from his home. His job was to analyze network vulnerabilities for startups and small companies. Since the scandal, he'd become even more immersed in his projects, finding a way to distract himself. Today, he had a meeting scheduled with a new client, a startup developing a financial planning app. The office was quiet, except for the clicking of keyboards and muffled conversations. Michael sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, and began to review a report on the latest project. His colleague Tom, sitting 2 desks away, approached with a mug of tea. "Good morning, Mike," Tom said, leaning on the edge of the table. "How are you? You look like you've been sleeping for about 4 hours." "5," Michael chuckled, not looking up from the screen. "New apartment, still getting used to it." "Well, it's just a matter of time." Tom took a sip of tea. "Listen, how are you? I mean, well, all of this." Michael leaned back in his chair and looked at Tom. He was his closest friend at the office, a forthright but tactful guy in his mid-30s with whom he sometimes went for beers after work. "Everything is fine," Michael said. "The divorce is final, the house is sold. I'm moving on." "Good job," Tom nodded. "It's just that, you've been kind of withdrawn lately. We're worried here." "I appreciate it," Michael smiled slightly. "But I'm fine. It just takes time." "Got it." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "Listen, tonight we're meeting at a bar, the Pike. Join us. There'll be guys from another company there. We'll relax." Michael hesitated. He had been avoiding unnecessary outings for the past few months, preferring solitude. But Tom's gaze was sincere, and Michael realized that refusing every time was not an option. "Okay," he said. "What time?" "7," Tom replied. "Don't be late, or you'll owe me a beer." "Deal." Michael returned to the laptop, feeling a slight sense of relief. Maybe it really wouldn't hurt to get out. He spent the day analyzing network traffic for a client. The startup they were working with had recently experienced a phishing attempt, and Michael was looking for weak spots in their system. By 5 o'clock, he had finished the report and sent it to the client. After saying goodbye to his colleagues, he left the office and headed home to change before going to the bar. The apartment greeted him with silence. Michael threw his backpack on the couch, changed into jeans and a dark blue shirt, and looked at himself in the mirror. At 42, he looked good, but the tiredness in his eyes was noticeable. He ran a hand through his short, dark hair, slightly touched with gray, and sighed. Time to move on, he told himself. The Pike was a busy bar. The buzz of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the music in the background created a lively atmosphere. Michael found Tom and his colleagues at a large table in the corner. There were about 10 people there, acquaintances from their firm and a few new faces from another software company. "Mike, there you are." Tom waved at him. "Sit down, we'll order you something now." "Dark beer," Michael said, sitting down next to him. "How's everyone doing?" "Nothing to complain about," said Sarah, an analyst on their team. "And you?" "Tom said you moved." "Yeah, Capitol Hill," Michael nodded. "It's a nice location, closer to work." "Cool," said the guy across from me, who introduced himself as Dan, a developer from another firm. "Capitol Hill is the center of the party scene. Have you settled in yet?" "I've only unpacked the boxes so far," Michael chuckled, "but I like the area." The conversation flowed easily, about work, new projects, plans for the weekend. Michael relaxed, sipping his beer. He wasn't particularly sociable, but the company was pleasant, and he even laughed a couple of times at Dan's jokes about bugs in the code. At one point, his gaze fell on the next table. There was a group of 4 people there, and among them was a woman who immediately caught his attention. She was about 35, her dark hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and her laughter, ringing and sincere, stood out against the general noise. She was telling something to her friends, actively gesturing, and they laughed. Michael caught himself looking at her a little longer than necessary and quickly looked away. "Mike, are you with us?" Tom nudged him with his elbow. "Dan wants to know if you'll be at the presentation of their new software next week." "Oh yeah," Michael returned to the conversation. "If I have time, I'll drop by." "What kind of software?" "Data analytics," Dan replied. "We want to show how it processes large arrays. Maybe you're interested in your cybersecurity." "Sounds good," Michael said. "Send me an invite and I'll take a look." He glanced again at the table next to him. The woman was still laughing, now showing something on her phone. Her energy was infectious, but Michael felt a pang of uncertainty. After everything that had happened with Rachel, he wasn't ready to meet new people, especially women. He finished his beer and decided to focus on the conversation with his colleagues. By 9 o'clock, the party began to disperse. Michael said goodbye to Tom and the others, declining an offer to go to another bar. "I'm up early tomorrow," he told Tom. "But thanks, it was great." "Come on, Mike, don't disappear," Tom replied. "And if anything happens, call me." Agreed, Michael shook his hand and went outside. The rain had stopped, the air was fresh. He took a deep breath and walked home, deciding to walk. The image of the woman from the bar, her smile, her lively gestures stuck in his head. He didn't know why she was stuck in his mind, but it was the first time in a long time that he felt anything other than tiredness or pain. At home, he turned on his laptop and checked his work email. An email had arrived from a client, thanking him for the report and asking him to call tomorrow. Michael responded briefly, "Okay, 10 a.m. is good." He then opened a news site, but quickly closed it. The Barkley headline was back on the front page. Instead, he turned on a podcast about new encryption methods and lay down on the couch, listening. The apartment was quiet, except for the ticking of the wall clock. Michael thought about how his life had changed in just a few months. Not long ago, he had lived in a big house with Rachel, planning vacations together, discussing the news with her. Now he was alone, in a new apartment, with a new reality. He didn't regret the divorce. Rachel had ruined their marriage, and he had done what he had to. But loneliness was crushing. The next day was a normal morning at the office. Michael arrived at 8, poured himself a coffee from the office coffee machine, and sat down to work. By 10, he had called the client to discuss the details of their security system. "Michael, great job," said the client, a man named Paul, the startup's CTO. "We found a couple of the vulnerabilities you reported. We're patching them now." "Good to hear," Michael replied. "If anything else comes up, let me know. I can do a follow-up audit." "Absolutely," Paul said. "Hey, are you going to the tech conference next month? We're presenting there." "I haven't planned it yet," Michael replied. "But send me the program, I'll think about it." "I'll send it," Paul promised. "Thanks again." After the call, Michael returned to analyzing the logs. The work was routine, but he appreciated its clarity. The code, the numbers, the logic, all of it was under control, unlike his personal life. At lunchtime, Tom came to see him with a sandwich in his hand. "Mike, how was last night?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the table. "Was it fun?" "Okay," Michael said. "Thanks for getting me out. Good company." "Yes, the guys from that company are cool," Tom nodded. "Dan already invited us to the next meeting. Will you go?" "Maybe," Michael answered. "I'll look at the schedule." "Look," Tom lowered his voice, "I'm not trying to pry, but if you need to talk, well, I know you've had a tough year." Michael looked at him. Tom was sincere, and that was appealing. "Thanks, Tom," he said. "I appreciate it. I just don't want to stir it up yet. We have to move forward." "I understand," Tom nodded. "But if you change your mind, I'm here." "Agreed," Michael smiled. "Now go and finish your sandwich or you'll drip all over the keyboard." Tom laughed and went to his desk. Michael went back to work, but thoughts of the previous evening did not leave him. He remembered the woman at the next table, her laughter, her gestures. He did not know if he would meet her again, but for some reason he hoped. That evening, he decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. Capitol Hill was bustling with activity, cafes, bars, people on the streets. Michael went into a small bookstore, bought a biography of a tech mogul, and sat in a nearby coffee shop, leafing through the book over an espresso. He tried to keep himself busy so he wouldn't have to return to an empty apartment too early. As he left the coffee shop, it started raining again. Michael pulled his hood up and quickened his pace. As he passed the pike, he involuntarily slowed down, glancing at the windows. It was as crowded as yesterday, but he didn't see the woman. He shook his head. It was stupid to hope for a chance meeting and went home. At his apartment, he turned on his laptop, answered a couple of work emails, and opened his calendar. Tomorrow was another day at the office, then a workout at the gym. He decided to sign up for rock climbing. Tom had mentioned it as a distraction. Maybe it would become a new hobby. Lying in bed, Michael thought about the future. The divorce, the scandal, the move, all that was behind him. Now he needed to build a new life. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he felt ready to take the first step. And the image of the woman from the bar, her smile, her laughter became a small but warm reminder that there was still room for something good in the world. Michael Hart started getting out of the house more. After his divorce and moving to a new apartment in Capitol Hill, he felt he needed to do something to keep himself busy and not dwell on the past. In early December, he signed up for a rock climbing class at a local gym near his home. The idea came from a conversation with Tom, a coworker who once mentioned that active recreation helps him cope with stress. Michael decided to give it a try, not for the sport, but to get back into shape and take his mind off Rachel and the scandal with Senator Barkley. The gym classes were held twice a week in the evenings, and he quickly got into it. He enjoyed focusing on the routes, clinging to the holds, and thinking only about the next step. He met a few people at the gym. Most were newbies like him, but there were also some experienced climbers who shared tips. One of them, a guy named Kyle, showed Michael how to tie a knot on a belay after his first workout. "Just don't rush," Kyle said, tightening the rope. "If you pull too hard, you might fall." "Got it," Michael replied, watching his movements. "How long have you been climbing?" "About 3 years," Kyle said. "I started when I quit smoking. I needed an adrenaline replacement." "Good choice," Michael chuckled. "I'm just learning to hold on to the wall." "It's okay, you'll get the hang of it," Kyle encouraged. "Come next Saturday, we're having a group." "I'll think about it," Michael said. "Thank you." Working out became an outlet for him. After work, he would come home, change into his workout gear, and go to the gym. He spent less time at home, which helped him cope with the loneliness. The apartment still felt empty, despite the fact that he had bought a few new things: a lamp, a rug, a couple of pillows. But without personal items like photos or souvenirs, it didn't feel like home. On Saturday, December 6th, Michael finished his workout around noon. It had been an intense session, his first time completing a moderate route without falling. Tired but happy, he decided to stop at Bean and Brew, a coffee shop 2 blocks away, to grab a latte. It was busy inside, a Saturday afternoon crowded with locals and tourists. Michael joined the line, pulled out his phone, and started scrolling through work emails. He responded to one from a client when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "No, seriously, I almost got stuck on that glacier," said a female voice, clear and alive. "If it weren't for Paul, I'd still be sitting there." Michael turned around. A couple of people behind him stood the same woman he had seen at the Pike a few weeks ago. She had her dark hair pulled back into a high ponytail and was wearing a sports jacket and jeans. She was talking to her friend, a short blonde in a bright green sweatshirt. Michael couldn't help but listen. "You're exaggerating, Emma," her friend laughed. "Paul said you just slipped." "Slipped?" The woman was indignant. "I almost fell into a crack." Michael smiled to himself, but quickly looked away so as not to look weird. He took a step forward in line, still holding the phone, but his thoughts were no longer on the letters. The name was Emma. He remembered. As he ordered his latte and walked to the counter, their eyes met. Emma was standing at the register, ordering a coffee. She looked at him, narrowed her eyes slightly, and then smiled, not formally, but with genuine curiosity. "Hey, you were at the gym rock climbing, right?" she asked, pointing to his backpack. On the zipper was a carabiner he'd attached after his first workout. Michael was a little confused, but quickly answered. "Yeah, I was there today. Just getting started." "I saw you," she said, coming closer. "You did pretty well for a newbie. My name is Emma. Emma Claire." She extended her hand. Michael shook it. Her palm was warm, slightly calloused, obviously from training. Michael Hart, he introduced himself. Pleased to meet you. Likewise, Emma replied, taking her order of black coffee. How long have you been climbing? A month, maybe a little more, Michael said, taking his latte. Still learning not to fall. Ha, that's okay, Emma laughed. I used to fail all the time a couple of years ago, too. Climbing is about patience. I already understood that, Michael smiled. And how long have you been doing this? About 2 years, she answered. I started when I moved to Seattle. Before that, I lived in Oregon, where I spent most of my time walking in the woods. Cool, Michael said. I'm only trying it in the gym. I haven't decided to try it on real rocks yet. Oh, that's worth a try, Emma said, taking a sip of coffee. The views in the Cascade Mountains are breathtaking. Have you been there? Nope, Michael shook his head. Only on hikes in my youth, but that was more of a walk than anything serious. Well, then you should come with us, said Emma. My friends and I sometimes go to the mountains. We take beginners, don't be afraid. That sounds tempting, Michael replied, feeling that the conversation was flowing more easily than he had expected. But I'm not sure I'm ready for the mountains yet. Everything starts somewhere, Emma winked. Tell me, how did you get into rock climbing in the first place? Michael hesitated. He didn't want to go into detail about the divorce and the stress, but he decided to answer honestly but briefly. I was just looking for something to do, he said. A friend recommended it and said it helps take my mind off things. And so I got hooked. I understand, Emma nodded. It was the same for me. I moved here, there was a ton of work, and I found my outlet in the hall. Where do you work, by the way? Cybersecurity, Michael replied. I advise startups so their data doesn't leak. Oh, seriously, Emma said, raising her eyebrows. I'm in it too, a programmer at a small company. We make software for environmental projects like how to track carbon emissions. Interesting, Michael said. I've never looked into environmental software. Tell me how it works. Emma smiled and began to explain. Well, in a nutshell, we collect data from sensors, for example, at factories or power plants, and our software analyzes how much carbon they emit. Then we give recommendations on how to reduce it. It's more analytics than anything super complicated. That sounds useful, Michael said. Do you have a lot of clients? Yes, we are growing slowly, she replied. We are currently working with several companies in California and here in Washington. What startups are you working with? Various, Michael said. Mostly fintech and medtech. I check their systems to make sure no one has hacked them. Sometimes you find holes they didn't even know they had. Cool, Emma said. We had a security audit at our company recently too. Too bad you weren't invited. You probably would have found something. Maybe they'll call me again, Michael chuckled. Let me know if anything happens. Okay, Emma replied. Her friend, standing nearby, looked at her watch and waved at her. We have to go, said her friend. We have a meeting in half an hour. Oh, right, Emma looked at Michael. Look, it was great chatting. If you decide to try the hike, text me. She took out her phone. Let's exchange numbers. Of course, Michael said, feeling a little nervous. He gave her his number, and Emma sent him a short text. Emma from the coffee shop. Now we won't get lost, she said, smiling. See you on the cliff, Michael. See you later, he replied, watching her leave with her friend. Michael remained at the counter, finishing his latte. The conversation with Emma had been short, but it had left a pleasant aftertaste. She was open, easy to talk to, and there was nothing forced about her manner. He glanced at the message on his phone and smiled. For the first time in months, he felt interested in someone new. He left the coffee shop and headed home. It had started to rain again, and he pulled the hood of his jacket up. As he walked, he thought about the conversation. Emma had mentioned hiking in the Cascade Mountains. It sounded like a challenge, but also like an opportunity. He wasn't sure he was ready for anything serious, whether it was hiking or meeting new people, but her enthusiasm was infectious. At home, Michael threw his backpack on the couch and turned on his laptop to check his work email. An email had arrived from Tom inviting him to meet again at the bar the following week. "Mike, let's go to the Pike again," Tom wrote. "Dan and the boys will be there. They say they like you." Michael replied, "Okay, sign me up. Tell me the time." Tom called back immediately. "Hey, Mike," you answered quickly, he said, laughing. "Not hiding in corners anymore?" "I'll try," Michael replied. "Thanks for last time, it was fine." "Glad you did," Tom said. "Listen, next time, take someone with you. You have friends besides me, right?" "Ha, I'll think about it," Michael said. "Maybe I'll invite someone from the gym." "Oh, you still go rock climbing?" Tom asked. "How is it?" "Not bad," Michael replied. "I completed the route without falling today. Progress." "Cool," Tom said. "Maybe you can drag me along sometime." "If you're not afraid of heights," Michael joked. "We'll see," Tom laughed. "Okay, see you at the bar. Don't disappear." "Okay," Michael said and hung up. He sat down on the couch, looking at his phone. The message from Emma was still on the screen. He considered texting her, but decided it was too early. Instead, he opened the gym's website to sign up for their next workout. Maybe he'd run into Emma again there. That evening, he ordered pizza and turned on a cybercrime series, not for the plot, but to distract himself. But his thoughts kept returning to Emma. Her energy, her laughter reminded him that life could be easy if you let it chance. He wasn't ready for anything serious, but the idea of just chatting without expectations seemed right. Before going to bed, he still wrote to Emma. "Hey, thanks for talking to me today. If there are any hikes, let me know." The answer came a minute later. "Hey, definitely stay on the rock." Michael smiled and went to bed, feeling that perhaps this was the beginning of something new. It had been 3 weeks since that chance meeting in the coffee shop, and Michael Hart was still trying to figure out what to do with the new feeling Emma Claire was evoking. She'd texted him a couple of times since their conversation, nothing serious, just texts about her workouts at the gym or memes about rock climbing. Once, she'd sent a picture of a cat hanging from a cliff with the caption, "You at last, class." Michael smiled and replied, "At least I don't meow when I fall." The conversation had been light, friendly, but he was wary. His divorce from Rachel had left a deep mark, and trust in people, especially romantic ones, was slow to rebuild. He didn't want to rush into it. Michael was sitting in his Capitol Hill apartment. He had just returned from a run, another habit he had begun to develop to cope with stress. A cup of cold coffee sat on the table, and his laptop was open to the news. The scandal involving Senator Julian Barkley was still raging. The media was reporting that the FBI had begun investigating his financial ties to biotech companies, including Medinovate, where Rachel worked. Michael quickly closed the tab. He was tired of the headlines. Later that day, he received a call from Tom, his colleague and friend. "Hey, Mike, are you up to date with the latest news?" Tom asked as soon as Michael picked up the phone. "Which ones?" Michael answered, although he already guessed. "About Barkley," Tom said. "They say he was trying to cover his tracks by moving money through some shell companies, and your ex apparently quit Medinovate." "Seriously?" Michael asked, though the news didn't surprise him. "When?" "About 2 weeks ago," Tom replied. "I heard she left before their internal investigation was over, probably to keep a low profile." "Her choice, her consequences," Michael said, shrugging, though Tom couldn't see it. "I don't care anymore." "I understand," Tom said. "How are you? Are you okay?" "Yeah, fine," Michael replied. "I work, I train. Life goes on." "Listen, that's good," said Tom. "I was worried you'd go back to your hole. How's your climbing going?" "There is progress," Michael said. "Yesterday, I completed a route that I couldn't manage a month ago." "Cool," Tom said. "Maybe you can drag me along sometime?" "If you're not afraid of heights," Michael chuckled. "Ha, we'll see," Tom replied. "Okay, see you at the office tomorrow." Yeah, see you tomorrow, Michael said and hung up. The job had indeed become his lifeline. His reputation as a cybersecurity consultant was growing. Clients valued his attention to detail and his ability to find vulnerabilities that others missed. Last week, a startup making a financial planning app offered him a long-term contract, 6 months with an option to extend. That meant a steady income and less stress about his finances. Michael took the deal, signing it last week. He's even started saving money thinking about a trip, maybe to the mountains, as Emma suggested. That same day, late in the afternoon, Emma texted, "Hey, our climbing group is meeting at the Pike tonight to discuss a trip in January. Come along if you want, 7 p.m." Michael looked at the text and thought about it. He liked Emma, but he was still unsure about getting closer. After some thought, he texted back, "Okay, I'll be there. Thanks for the invite." He changed into jeans and a dark sweatshirt, deciding not to wear anything too formal. The bar was crowded, as it usually was on Fridays. Michael found Emma's group at a large table in the corner. There were 6 people there, including Emma. She noticed him and waved. "Michael, over here," she called, pointing to the empty chair next to her. "Guys, this is Michael, new to our room." "Hi, Michael," said the bearded guy sitting across from me. "I'm Paul. Nice to meet you." "Likewise," Michael replied, shaking his hand. "Are you all climbers?" "Yeah," said the girl with short red hair. "I'm Liz. How long have you been climbing?" "A little over a month," Michael said, sitting down. "Still learning." "Not bad for a beginner," Paul said. "Emma said you were improving quickly." "She's exaggerating," Michael chuckled, looking at Emma. "I'm not exaggerating," Emma said, nudging him with her elbow. "I saw you hanging on that blue route yesterday. That's pretty cool for a newbie." "Thank you," Michael said, feeling the tension drain away, "but I still fall more often than I'd like." "It's normal," said another guy, who introduced himself as Jake. "I've been climbing for 2 years, and I still fall off sometimes." "The main thing is insurance," Liz added, raising her glass of beer, "and good company." Everyone laughed, and Michael ordered a dark beer. The conversation quickly turned to plans for the trip. Emma took the floor. "Okay, guys," she said, opening her laptop. "I found a route to Mount Rainier. Snow Lake, moderate difficulty, 2 days. Who's in?" "I'm in," Paul said. "Just check the forecast. There's snow in January." "I already checked," Emma answered. "They're predicting clear weather next week." "Michael, what do you think? Will you come with us?" Michael hesitated. He wasn't sure if he was ready for a real hike, but the eyes of the entire group were on him. "I'll think about it," he said. "I've never been on a hike like this. What should I take?" "A backpack, a sleeping bag, good boots," Emma began listing, "and warm clothes. We'll tell you everything. Don't be afraid." "I'm not afraid," Michael said with a smile. "I just don't want to slow you down." "You won't," Jake said. "We all started somewhere. Emma, remember how you pitched the tent backwards on your first camping trip?" "Oh, don't remind me," Emma laughed, covering her face with her hands. I almost froze then. "Tell me," Michael asked, becoming interested. "Nothing special," Emma said, still laughing. "On the first trip, I thought I knew how to pitch a tent. I pitched it, went to bed, and during the night the wind blew straight in because I had the entrance facing the wrong way. We found her this morning, wrapped in a sleeping bag like a burrito," Paul added, and everyone laughed again. "Well, I'm a pro now," Emma said, winking at Michael, "so I'll keep an eye on you." "It's a deal," Michael said, feeling himself getting lighter. The company was friendly, and he began to relax. The conversation moved on to other topics: gear, favorite routes, funny stories. Michael told a story from his youth when he tried to climb a hill with friends and rolled down, tearing his pants. "It was humiliating," he finished, laughing. "But at least I realized that rock climbing wasn't for me. Well, until recently." "Ha, that's a great story," Liz said. "You're with us now, so get ready for more adventures." By 10 o'clock, the group began to disperse. Michael and Emma walked outside with the others, walking them to the parking lot. "So, are you coming to the mountains with us?" Emma asked when they were alone. "If I don't lead you into the abyss," Michael said, smiling. "Okay," she replied with a wink. "I'll keep an eye on you." "Thanks," Michael said. "Listen, it was great today. Your company, it's great." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Emma said. "We always welcome newcomers. I'll text you the details of the hike, okay?" "Okay," Michael nodded. "Good night, Emma." "Calm down, Michael," she replied and walked away to her car. Michael walked home. The night air was cold, but he felt the warmth of the evening. At home, he lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Emma was different, not like Rachel. Her openness and sincerity were comforting, but the fear was still there. He was afraid to trust again and be wrong. Rachel taught him that trust can turn into betrayal. He opened his phone and reread the messages from Emma. The latest was a rock-climbing meme, a man hanging from a cliff with the caption, "When you forgot where the next hold was." Michael smiled and wrote, "This is about me at the gym tomorrow." The reply came quickly, "Ha, don't give up. See you there." Michael Hart stood outside his Capitol Hill apartment, packing his backpack for a hike. It was morning, and he was getting ready for his first real hike in the Cascade Mountains with Emma's group. He checked the list she'd sent him: sleeping bag, warm clothes, hiking boots, flashlight, water bottle, snacks. Everything was there, but he still felt unsure. He'd gotten the hang of the gym, but a real hike in Mount Rainier National Park was new. He put on his jacket, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and walked out to the car, where Emma was waiting. "Ready?" she asked, smiling as Michael climbed into her SUV. She was wearing a sports jacket and a beanie, her hair pulled back into a ponytail. "I hope so," Michael replied, putting his backpack on the back seat. "If I fall behind, don't leave me there." "We won't abandon you," Emma laughed. "But if anything happens, we have Paul. He's a master of rescue operations." "Seriously?" Michael asked, fastening his seat belt. "Well, almost," Emma said, starting the car. "He pulled Jake out of a snowdrift once. That counts." "You've reassured me," Michael chuckled. "How long is the journey?" "About 2 hours," she replied. "We'll meet the others at the entrance to the park. Did you get enough sleep?" "More or less," Michael said. "I spent half the night yesterday checking to make sure I had everything." "Ha, typical newbie," Emma winked. "Relax, the route is not difficult. The main thing is to stick to the path and listen to us." "I'll try," Michael said, looking out the window. Rain was pounding the glass, but the forecast called for clear weather by midday. The trip passed quickly. They chatted about work, rock climbing, and weekend plans. Emma told them that her company had recently won a contract with a major energy firm. "We have a ton of data to process now," she said. "I spend half my time coding and half my time in meetings." "Sounds familiar," Michael said. "I'm currently working on a contract with a fintech startup. They want me to test their system from top to bottom. I've already found a couple of holes." "Cool," Emma said. "You're like a detective, only for code." "Something like that," Michael smiled. "How do you handle deadlines? You probably have a lot on fire, too." "Oh, all the time," she replied. "I drink coffee and swear at bugs. And you?" "Coffee and silence," Michael said. "If there's music, it's instrumental." "Seriously?" Emma was surprised. "I can't code without rock. You need to listen to something more lively." "Maybe you could give me a playlist," Michael suggested. "Agreed," she replied. "I'll send it after the hike." They arrived at the parking lot at the entrance to Mount Rainier National Park. The group was already waiting: Paul, Liz, Jake, and 3 others, Sarah, Kyle, and Mia. They were all wearing hiking clothes, with backpacks and trekking poles. "Michael, welcome," Paul said, shaking his hand. "Ready to conquer the mountains?" "I'll try to keep up," Michael replied. "You won't leave me alone," Liz said. "We're all watching each other here." "It's true," Sarah added, adjusting her hat. Jake almost lost a shoe in the mud last year. Don't remind me, Jake groaned. That was my best hike. And the dirtiest, Mia laughed. Michael, don't listen to him, just stick to the trail. Got it, Michael said, feeling the group accept him as one of their own. Emma handed out route maps to everyone and explained the plan. We're going to Snow Lake, she said. About 6 miles there, camp at the lake, back in the morning. The trail is easy, but there's a rocky section. Everyone ready? Yes, Paul and Liz answered in unison. Then let's go, Emma said, and the group moved along the path. Michael walked in silence for the first couple of miles, focusing on his steps. The trail was damp from recent rain, but the sky was beginning to clear. Emma walked alongside him, occasionally pointing out landmarks. See that peak over there? She said, pointing to a mountain in the distance. That's Mount Rainier. We're not going there, but it's a beautiful view. It's beautiful, Michael said, looking at the snow-capped peak. Do you come here often? Once every couple of months, Emma replied. It's my place to recharge. What do you do to unwind? I used to read, Michael said. Now it's rock climbing and running. But this, he nodded toward the trail, this is something new. You'll like it, Emma said. The main thing is don't rush. Watch your step, the rocks are slippery. Got it, Michael said, stepping carefully along the uneven path. On a rocky section, he began to lag behind. Paul noticed and slowed down. Michael, is everything okay? He asked. Yeah, I'm just not used to it, Michael replied, breathing harder. It's harder than in the gym. Okay, Paul said. Stay behind me, and I'll show you where to put your feet. Thank you, Michael said, following him. Emma slowed down too, staying close. You're a good girl, she said. This section is stressful for all newbies. The main thing is, don't rush. I try, Michael said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. And how did you learn to walk so calmly on the stones? Practice, Emma answered, and a couple of falls. Once I fell so badly that my knee was bruised for a week. Seriously? Michael asked. Yeah, she laughed. But then I learned to look ahead, not at my feet. Try it. Okay, Michael said, trying to follow her advice. By 4 o'clock, they had reached Snow Lake. The group set up camp. They pitched tents and collected firewood. Michael helped Kyle pitch the tent, although he felt clumsy. Where have you been camping before? Kyle asked, hammering in a stake. Only in my youth, Michael replied. But they were more like walks. Nothing serious. Well, that's serious, Kyle said. Good for you for taking the plunge. Thanks to Emma, Michael said. She talked me into it. She knows how, Kyle smiled. Emma draws everyone into her adventures. By evening, the group had gathered around the campfire. Paul had lit the fire and everyone sat around, toasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Emma began to tell the story. We went to the glacier last year, she said. I almost got stuck. Paul, tell me how you got me out. Oh, that was epic, Paul said. Emma slipped and got stuck in knee-deep snow. I thought she was going to stay there. Don't exaggerate, Emma said, laughing. I'm just a little stuck. A little? Liz picked up. You were screaming, Paul, save me, I'm freezing. Everyone laughed, including Michael. And you, Michael, what do you have to tell? Asked Mia. Any stories? Michael thought about it and decided to share something light. When I worked at the NSA, he began, we had a colleague who once spilled coffee on a server. Everything went down for an hour. Seriously? Jake asked, chuckling. Then what? He almost got fired, Michael said, but he bought us all coffee for a week afterwards. Ha, great story, Sarah said. Have you made any mistakes yourself? It's happened, Michael said. I was testing code once and accidentally sent a report to a client with a bunch of bugs. I had to apologize. Oh, that sounds familiar, Emma said. I once sent my boss a prototype with a bug, and he showed it at a presentation. It was embarrassing. But you survived, Paul winked. Barely, Emma replied, and everyone laughed again. After dinner, when the others began to go to their tents, Michael and Emma stayed by the lake. The sky was clear, the stars were shining brightly. They sat on the rocks, looking at the water. "It's a great day," Michael said. "Thanks for inviting me." "I'm glad you came," Emma replied. "How was the hike?" "I'm tired, but it's worth it," he said. "You're all so easy to talk to. I haven't felt like this in a long time." "That's good," Emma said. "You know, I used to be closed off too. After one difficult period, I learned to appreciate such moments." "What period?" Michael asked, looking at her. "A breakup, losing my job," she replied. "It all came crashing down on me a couple of years ago. But I got out. And you, what happened to you? You don't have to tell me, but I can see that you're holding something in." Michael hesitated. He didn't want to go into details, but her sincerity was appealing. "Divorce," he said. "My ex. Let's just say it ended badly. There was a scandal that was widely reported. I'm just trying to move on." "It's hard," Emma said, looking at him. "I've never been through a divorce, but I know what it's like when everything falls apart. You're a good man for being here." "Thank you," Michael said. "You really know how to talk to people." "I try," she smiled. "Just be yourself, Michael. That's a lot." They sat for a while longer, then returned to the tents. Michael went to bed feeling that this day had been important to him. Emma and her friends had made him feel like he wasn't alone, and that was the first step toward rebuilding trust. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.